And hello everyone, welcome back to another C++ tutorial. So in the previous tutorial we did talk a bit about functions. If you haven't seen my video about functions, I highly recommend you do, because in this video we're going to be actually using them. The same goes for if statements as well as data types, so please make sure you know all of those. Cool, so in this video we'll be looking at doing some math functions in C++ and creating a calculator, getting user input, and then using that user input to calculate. Alright, so first off, let's get the user input. We can first go and create a cout and just give the user some information of what everything does. So here we can say plus, or actually we can maybe let the user figure it out themselves, but if you wanted to, you can maybe go and say that is plus, and you can maybe put your own things here. You don't necessarily need it to be a plus. You could put something like, let's say, a P for a plus, or I don't know, what else would look like a plus? A pipe, anything. This is just so the user knows what everything is. And then we can go \t, and this is just formatting. You don't need to do this, but I would like to. And actually just go one \t. So this we'll just add a tab to the string. And here we can say minus, and we can say minus, and then \n to say new line. Or if you wanted to, you can go and create another cout here. It's optional, \n here or another cout. Let's go with another cout. I like this method a bit more, just because it looks nicer. And in divide we can say that is a /, but you could also go something like a D for divide or whatnot. And we can just say divide. And here we can say for times, we can maybe put an X there. And we can say times. And there we go. Now the user has 4 characters which they can use to times or divide or whatnot. Cool. Now we need to ask the user what do they want to do, because I would like to get what they want to do first. But this is just my personal preference. You don't have to do this in the same order. I just like doing it in this order. But you could first get the user input with numbers, and then you could get what they want to do. Or you could do number, what they want to do, number, whichever you like. In fact, let's actually just do that instead. Let's first get a number. So let's go here and say, please enter the first number. And this first number will not have an std end al, because remember, this adds an extra line at the end, and we want the input to be on the same line. There's personal preference, you don't have to do this. And then I'm going to just create 2 variables, double, and I'm going to do a double, because if the user may want to do something like 3.4 and not just 3, then putting it inside of a double will work perfectly fine. But if you wanted to, you can make it just integers. And then here we can just say double num1 and num2. This syntax basically means create 2 variables of the same type. So double num1 and double num2. Both of these are empty at the moment, but we will fill them soon enough. In fact, let's put all of these that we are not going to fill at the moment. We can put here at the top. So char, and then the operator. I'm going to call this OP because I don't know how to spell operator. There we go. So a char is 1 character, for in case you might have forgotten, so that would be something like A, or 65, the number, or 4. If you haven't seen my video on data types, I do recommend you do, because this is in there. And here we can first get the user input. So I'm going to get the input, and I'm going to store it inside of num1, because we want to get num1 first. Then I'm going to ask the user to enter their operator. So cout, I'm going to say what would you like to do? And let's actually put that here then, because now it makes sense to display what they can do. So we can do this, and in here we can say cout answer. And we can just remove that end out to get the answer on the same line. And now here we can say cin, and you can put it into OP for operator. Now take note of these directions. You might get an error if it's in the wrong direction. It's very important to keep them in the same direction. So this one will always go like this because you're taking input and storing it into something. This will always go this way because you are putting input into the console. That's how this goes. And this is just basically a \n. So you can just think of it like that. So you're adding a \n to the end of your line, and \n means new line. So like that. Now we're getting the operator. Now we can copy this, paste it here, and say, please enter the second number. And now here we can just say num2. We want to basically create a few if statements here, because if what they do is add a plus, then we want to add those together. If they do want to do a minus, we want to minus them. So I'm going to say if OP is equal to, and I'm going to say plus, and since it's a char, a character, we want to use single quotes because we're comparing a character to another character, not to a string, and strings have double quotes whilst characters have single quotes. And then we want to do something, and we want to do this as well for everything else. So we can say else, and I'm going to copy this if statement. So CB, so it's plus, minus, divide, and times. But we don't need this extra else if, we just need an else, because the last operator will basically be our default. Or you could put an else there to rather give them like an error message, like what you chose was not part of the allowed options. So here we can now start putting functions. Now these functions are very small and it's optional to add them, but I'm going to do these functions just so you can see that you can use functions, so you can actually get a real life example of these. So let's do 2 of them like this, and then 2 of them without doing it like this, just so you can see the difference. So double sum, and here we can say double num1 and double num2. So this will be adding. We can actually just call this add instead of sum. And now here we can return num1 plus num2. Like that. We can add another one, and this one can maybe be for division. So I'm going to call this div for division, and it's just going to divide. Now, just to show you this works, we can then go cout to console output, and we want to say the answer, and then we can put the answer like this: sum, or not sum, add, and num1 with num2. Something like that. And we just need to remember to do that. Add that right there. And then we can do the same and for divide. And the last one would be divide, because this would be minus and this would be times, or x. So this would be divide. So by default it would divide if they don't put what they should in here. And in here we can just say div. And that's neat. Now for the other two, it's pretty simple. All we have to do is we can just go here, we can actually copy this, paste it, and now we can modify it. So instead of saying something like div, And I'm still going to put it inside of these right here, these brackets. It's completely optional. I just want to do it. And in here, I'm going to put a minus symbol. And that was supposed to be a times, but here we can put a times. There we go. So there's two ways to do it. So first, you can either use functions to do it. So they would be like up here. Or you can put it in just like this. This is mostly just because it's so small. But if you were to have much more bigger functions or much more larger code that you go in here, then putting them inside of functions would be better. Because let's say you want to reuse this function somewhere. That would be pretty useful then. If the function was bigger, because currently it just returns one line. Which is so insignificant, to be honest, isn't really worth it. But this is just as an example to give you an intro on this. So let's save this and run it and see if it actually works. And woo, I almost installed Legends of Runeterra. Interesting. I'm going to cpile this. So first we enter the first number. And let's say it's 7.9. So we are right here. Please enter the first number. Enter. What would you like to do? I would like to add. And then we can enter a second number. And let's go 9.1. The answer is 17. Because 9 plus 7 is 16. And then 0.9 plus 0.1, that's 1. And then 16 plus 1 is 17. So it's definitely correct. Let's do another one, just to make sure it works. One without a function. Let's go here and run it again. Now we can say, let's say 9. And we want to minus, and let's say 89. And then we get 80 or negative 80. And that's a basic calculator. This is something very, very simple, but it can be very useful if you're having some trouble understanding a few things, because it covers the topics of if statements, it covers the topics of doubles, and it covers the topics of numbers and functions and variables. It's very, very useful getting user input. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into this because I want to keep it as simple as possible, so no matter how much you know, you'll still be mostly able to follow along. But if you do want to do some homework, you'll notice if I make the first number, let's say hello, then you'll see this. We get what would you like to do, and then we'll get please get the second number, and then it just says negative none. None, which means not a number. So what you need to do is first make sure that this doesn't cause this to happen. I might have covered this in a previous video where I talked about user input, where you can stop this from happening. So it shouldn't autofill these right here. Next up is you should make sure that what they enter in here is a valid double or an integer or a float or any number. And for that you need to check the data type, which can be a little bit more complex and not something I'm willing to really talk about in this tutorial for beginners. Maybe later in the tutorial when we're not beginners anymore. So yeah, that is the basic calculator. Do the homework if you want to, and yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy, and I will see you all again in the next C++ tutorial.